Hey everybody, welcome to Presentation College's series on assessment, some preparation for our new faculty to understand what you can do to measure how well your students are learning and how well you are teaching. In this module, we will help you explain what assessment is and why we do it. You'll learn to distinguish diagnostic, summative, and formative assessment. You'll be able to describe appropriate uses of objective, essay, and oral assessments. And you'll be able to explain and evaluate the authenticity of assessments in your classroom. So first off, what is assessment? Very simply, assessment is any activity you do to gather data to measure student learning. Figure out how they're doing in your class. Now, first thing that may spring to your mind is tests. Midterm, the final, all that. That's certainly assessment. But you can also gather data to measure student learning in a variety of other ways. You can do that with projects. You can do it with homework. You can do it by having students make speeches. You're even doing assessment when you ask students questions and give them answers in class. You're figuring out what's in their heads and maybe what else you have to help them get into their heads, what skills they have to develop. So again, assessment, anything you do to gather data about student learning. Really important thing to know about assessment and to practice is that assessment is integral to your teaching. It's not separate from the teaching and learning process. You do assessment during class, during the course, not just at the end when all is said and done. When it's integrated into your teaching, assessment becomes a really useful lever. It gets students' attention, it drives their learning activity, it motivates them to do better. If they know there's a grade, they're going to work for it. But it also gives you a chance to give students something else that really motivates them, and that's feedback. When you're using assessment in class as it's happening, and you're responding to the data that students give you to give them feedback about their learning, students pick up on that, and they recognize, oh, this is how I can do better. That's a great motivator in the class. So integrate your assessment into all of your teaching practices. As you assess, recognize there will be three principles that you need to keep in mind that need to guide your assessments. First of all, objectives. What do you want to measure? Now, what you want to measure should be your learning outcomes, the things that you're after, stated in the syllabus, the textbook, and everything. What do you want to measure? What aspects of that student learning? Once you know the objectives you want to measure, then you have to decide what students are going to do, what activity they're going to do to allow you to measure their learning. And then you've got to put the objectives and the activities together with criteria. How will you know that what your students do measures what they know? You've got to find ways to tie that together. So think about what you want to measure, the specific knowledge and skills you're looking for. Think about the actions students will take to demonstrate that knowledge and those skills. And then think about the criteria you will use to establish what you're measuring, to establish what you think is in their heads. As you assess, you'll also want to think about, how often do I do it? I say, do it really often. Do it early in the class and do it all the time. Consider that any assessment you do will be imperfect. It will miss some of the picture. So I'm going to contend that if all you're doing is two big assessments, like a midterm and a final exam, even if they're really big, they're going to miss some things that students have done that have happened in the class. They're going to miss maybe some gaps in their head, and they won't give you, those two big assessments won't give you a complete picture. I would suggest that if you do more regular assessments, like every week you have a quiz or a discussion or a forum, and in every class, if you're asking questions for understanding, if you're checking what students get and challenging them and having conversations with them, you're basically taking snapshots each week. Those little snapshots, even though they're smaller, will still grab a more comprehensive picture of what's going on throughout the course. And when you get done, you can lay all those assessments out and get a better picture of how your students are performing. So, I will tell you that as you assess your students, as you go to collect data about their learning, do it early, do it often, so you can get the best picture of how they're performing and how you are performing as an instructor. So that's our introduction to assessment, the business of collecting data to help you measure how students are learning and how you're teaching. In our upcoming videos in this sequence, we will have videos on functions of assessment, we'll talk about some traditional tests, and we'll talk about authentic assessment in your classroom.